So, Dom,
Yes.
what's next up, huh? Why don't you tell the people all about it?
Well, recently I had the privilege of talking with Sandra Niemi, author of Glamour Ghoul, The Passions and Pain of the Real Vampira, Maila Nurmi. Sandra is also Maila Nurmi's niece. I'd now like to share some of that interview with you. Roll it.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome, Sandra. How are you doing?
Oh, it's so good
Oh,
to be
that's so
here.
wonderful to hear. It's a real honor and a privilege to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've been such a long life fan of Mila, and I feel very privileged to be able to talk to you today.
Oh, you're entirely with my pleasure.
So your book that's been out, it's been out now for a few months, right?
Yes.
Right. I have to say that it's like one of the best books I've read. Um, it was incredible. I couldn't put it down. I was glued to it. I went through the whole thing like within 1 to 2 days. Um, I thought your writing was absolutely amazing, and I'm just curious. Had you written anything before?
Never. I
Really?
finished, yes, I graduated in English from
Okay.
college when I was 22, but I never did a single thing with it. I never wrote anything until this labor of love for my Aunt Mila.
Mhm.
And I began it at age 60 and didn't finish it until age 72. So I guess it's
Yeah.
never too late. Yeah.
Absolutely not. And 12 years. And what was the reason that, I mean, were you taking your time? Was there reasons why?
No, no, it was just a lot of self-doubt.
Oh,
I thought, what makes you think you can write? Mila wouldn't like this or Mila wouldn't like that. I mean, would she be insulted with the finished result? Does anyone care about the book? Will anyone ever be interested enough to read it? Oh, you just can't write. But you know what happened, and I believe somewhere Mila had a hand in this because, as you know, at the end, I discovered a family member,
yes,
if you've read the book.
yes.
And Mila would have said, this is my story, and no story is complete without mentioning this person.
Mm,
And you haven't met this person yet, so you can't finish the book. Because within 1 month after meeting this person, the book sold. And
wow.
and there it is. I finished the last chapter after I met this person, and there it was. And I sent it to the first publisher. A lot of people say it's hard to find a publisher. I sent it to Feral House, and
Yeah,
they took it right off the bat. So Mila must have had something to do with this whole project.
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's definitely a fate thing, isn't it, then?
Yeah, yeah. What
Yeah.
else can it be?
Oh,
So I guess she approves.
well, absolutely. I mean, you've done her so well. You've done such an amazing job.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
and I think that so many people are going to love reading this book as much as I have.
Oh,
I'm
good.
curious to know about your how you put the book together. Like, I know that you came to the house and you found all these different diaries and things around the house, and I'm wondering how you kind of put everything together and how you felt when you found everything.
Well, there was a lot of stuff. And it wasn't just diaries or, pages of handwritten text. Sometimes it was just a sentence or two or a memory or two, and then they were distributed all through the house. Sometimes they were crumpled up in a pocket of an old jacket or an old handbag. Sometimes they were in a desk drawer. Sometimes they were written on the margin of a calendar
Mm,
or old Vampira mimeograph copies of photographs of her, just all over the place. And so I gathered up everything with her writing because I knew maybe I'm going to write a book with this because
Yeah.
Maila ran out of time. She always wanted her autobiography out there and tried it 3 different times that I know of, but she was never happy. And she was always worried that the person who was helping her write the book was going to steal it. So she never got the book finished or never got it started really. But I took everything I found in her apartment and I put it in 2 garbage bags.
Wow.
And I hauled it to the motel and then I sifted through it, sat on the bed and sifted through everything. This is nothing. This is something. Oh, this is funny. Oh, this is great. And then when I started writing the book, I had looked at everything I had and then I put it into decades. I said, okay, this was the 40s and this was the 50s and this was the 60s and so on. And that's how the book came to be, you know.
Wow.
Sometimes I had to guess which decade it was coming from. Oh, but you know, I just put it together the best way I could. I didn't have Maila to help me.
Yeah, and what over the years, like, did you have a specific sort of routine for working on the book? I mean, did you spend a certain amount of time every day? Did you set aside time to work on it, or was it sort of something you did every day, or every kind of week, or every couple of weeks, or?
Oh, sometimes I put it away for a couple of years.
Oh,
I
okay.
just convinced that, you know, it's nothing. You know, my friend would read it and say, "Oh, this is just great." And I thought, well, you know, you're my friend. What are you going to say? It's really rotten,
Yeah.
you know? And so I disbelieved a lot of it until I have a Facebook friend who lives in Finland,
Mm,
and he is an established author, and his name is Ari Vantinen.
okay.
And he and I started conversing about Maila. He was a fan. And he said, well, send me a couple of chapters. And he ranted and raved about how great it was. And that was the first inkling I had. Well, maybe it's not as bad as I thought.
Oh,
And so at the end, he edited the book for me and
okay.
made some suggestions. And I took every one of his suggestions and added it to the book. Great suggestions. And so I have to give a lot of credit to Ari because he
Mm,
encouraged me every step of the way. And then when I met this special person in November of 2019, that was the icing on the cake. And the book
wow.
came out.
It's
Yeah.
just so amazing. I'm not going to give away all the ideas in the book because I want people to get the book and read it for themselves. And what I'm really fascinated with is about your part in it, and being a relative of Mila, and how you felt like when you went through all of these pieces of her life, and you were reading them, putting them together. I mean, how did was there anything that you were really surprised about that you didn't know? I'm just really curious about how much you knew, how much of it came as a surprise when you were reading through it.
Well, I knew that Mila had had a child. I knew that
Mm,
from the family. And I knew about Orson Welles. I might as well
mm,
say that. I didn't know she'd done cheesecake.
mm,
And that was a total surprise. I'm sure
really?
my parents knew, but I was just a child then. I would
Yeah.
have been 6 or 7, so they didn't say anything. They were probably embarrassed, uh, especially my dad, as he was kind of like his father, very conservative, but funny, very good sense of humor. Anyway, yeah, I didn't know that. I didn't know. Well, you know, I didn't know who my Aunt Mila was. I always wanted to know what she was doing, where she was
Mm.
living. Was she married? Did she have children? You know, she was my Aunt Mila, and she was beautiful.
Mm,
And so like I said, she became my private Cinderella
yes.
because is this blonde goddess with these blue eyes, and she's gorgeous. But I saw her at my grandmother's funeral when I was 10, and then I didn't see her again until I was 42. And all of that time in between, I had no idea what she was doing or who she was seeing or if she was married or who her friends were. And so when I finally connected with her in 1988 and visited her in 1989, I wanted to know things like, what's your favorite food? What's your
Mhm.
favorite color? What do you do with your day? Who are your friends? What do you like to do? Just I never asked about Vampira. I
Mhm.
never asked about the lawsuit because to me, as a niece, Vampira was my Aunt Mila in a black
Mhm.
dress. It was she was just wearing a black dress, and that was Aunt
That was
Mila
her
with a
job.
with a yeah, that was her job with a black wig.
Yeah.
And but she never stopped being Mila. And so that's why I wrote this book too, because I wanted people to know who the woman was behind the Vampira costume.
Yes.
She was a real live human being with feelings and emotions, and that's what I wanted to bring out. That's who
Yeah.
she
Why?
was.
And did you try and contact her during those years? Because there's a long time between you.
Yep, yep, yep. We wrote after I went back to Oregon. We wrote back and forth until 1991 or two, and then at Christmas I sent her a case of fish from one of our local fish stores because we lived on the Oregon coast. Lots of fish there. And I sent her half a case. There was tuna, and there was salmon, and there was sturgeon, and there was crab, and there was all kinds, and a bottle of wine and a wine opener because I didn't think she might have not have a wine opener. And
Mhm.
I sent a can opener, and I never heard back. I don't know if she got the present but and I wrote her another letter, and she didn't respond. And it wasn't until uh, the book was finished that I realized, oh, I thought she was angry at me. I thought, because once Mila crossed you off her
Yeah.
list, you were gone. She never wanted anything to do with you again. And I thought I had offended her somehow. But as it turned out, she got busy. Ed Wood had come out, the movie, and all of
Mhm.
a sudden she was in demand again, and she blossomed, and she was invited to soirees, and she was invited to interviews, and she was photographed, and she blossomed. She didn't have time for me. I was the other world, and now she was blooming. It was her final time. So that's why she just didn't have time to or inclination to write to me. I was in the past. That
Mm.
was Mila. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And I know that she had like several different aliases as well. She went by several different names. It might have made it quite difficult to get in touch with her and find her.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. My father passed away in 1977, her only sibling, and she didn't know about it until 1988
Mm.
because I tried to find her, and I enlisted the help of the Red Cross to find her.
Mm.
They couldn't find her because at the time she was using the alias Helen Heaven.
Yes.
And so she never knew. And she wrote back to me when I told her that my dad had passed away. She said, to think that Bobby has died and I never knew. Shame on me. And
Mm.
that's all she ever said about that. Uh, they weren't close. They were close as children, but as adults, they weren't because he represented everything she reviled.
Mm.
He had a wife and a child and a home and a job, 9 to 5 job, and that was the last thing she ever wanted. She wanted to be
Yes.
free as a bird and be artistic and, have this artistic freedom without any ties that bind. And
Yes.
she always thought her mother favored my dad, and it wasn't true. That
Oh.
wasn't true.
What do you think were Mila's what her happiest times? Because reading the book, I mean, really, the title says everything. I mean, it's such an extreme roller coaster of highs and lows throughout her life. I'm wondering what you think that she thought was her happiest time.
I think I think her happiest time was with Dean Reisner in the
Mm,
beginning. That would have been from about 1948 to 1954. It did not end well,
yeah.
but she loved Dean.
Mm,
Um, she was happy with her times with James Dean.
mhm,
She loved him until her last breath. She thought of him as a son,
yeah.
and she hoped that he thought of her as the mother he had lost when he was
Yes.
9. So that was their relationship, totally platonic.
Mhm.
Platonic. It was a mother-son type of
Yes.
relationship. So she was happy there. She was happy living on, when I saw her, she was happy living on Hudson in Hollywood. She'd lived there for, gosh, 75, 85, almost 20 years, I think she lived on Hudson, even though it was a reconverted garage, a small
Yeah.
place. She didn't have a refrigerator.
About that actually because reading the fact that she was didn't have electricity or didn't have a bed even um and didn't have a refrigerator and I'm just shocked that happened, that there wasn't any help or that none of the friends or people support would would help her in that matter. I mean, why do you think that was?
I think she would have rejected any help. I think she somehow believed her bag lady consciousness.
Mm,
Uh, Not that she enjoyed being poor, but by the time she reached her 50s and her 60s, I think she just thought, well, this is my lot in life. I just don't have the money, but I'll find a way to survive. And she made jewelry and she made
mm.
clothes. And then she finally got Social Security because of the pernicious anemia. She
Yes. Yeah.
should have gotten it years before she finally applied for it and got it. But she was happy. I don't know. I think she was happy when she lived on East Melrose from about 1972
Mm,
to 82. That is when she became friends with the Alvarez family. At that time, Hilda was a Alvarez, and they had um, a Mexican restaurant
mm,
right across the street from where Mila lived. And Hilda and Mila became very good friends
mhm.
and remained friends for the rest of Mila's life. And then eventually Hilda divorced her husband, married another man, and she became Hilda Alvarez. And when Mila moved away, Hilda and Mila still visited. Hilda went over and visited Mila. In fact, she's the woman who found Mila after she had passed away. And I had lunch with her a couple of times. Wonderful, wonderful woman. But she was happy there, and she was happy on Hudson. I don't think she was happy on Serrano, her last house where she lived. I don't think it was quite the right place for her, although it was a bigger place and she had a refrigerator and she had a stove
Yeah.
and she had a spare bedroom that she never used. She just stored her memorabilia in there and had the cat box in there. So I don't know. She just sort of got used to being poor and enjoyed her, like I said, bag lady consciousness.
Yeah.
She said, I'm a bag lady that has 4 walls and a roof.
Mm.
Uh, and
Do
then
you
she
think there's
wrote,
anything? Sorry.
I don't know if I even put this poem in the book, but it always struck me as very sad. Mila wrote it apparently. She said, see the women in the park. Ugly women, chiefly. Someone must have loved them once, but in the dark and briefly.
Ooh. I don't think that is in the book, Sandra. So thank you very much for
Yeah,
sharing that with us.
yeah, I think she was referring to herself
That's
as
quite
being
sad.
ugly.
Oh,
Yeah, someone
I think
must have
that,
loved them once, but in the dark and
yeah.
briefly.
Do you think, how do you think her self-confidence was? Do you think that she was a confident woman?
Do I think she was confident? I think she was confident when she had her show in the early 50s in Vampira show.
Mhm.
The Elvira really messed up her life.
Mhm.
That was a terrible, horrible time in her life, and I don't think it ever went away.
Yeah.
But um, she was confident then, and then I think she was confident when she appeared in Las Vegas with Liberace.
Mhm.
And then she kept saying, deep down, I'm a shy person. But
Mm.
I didn't see that. Maybe it was because the only time she would go out and be seen was when she was feeling powerful and vital and good. If she wasn't, she would just hunker down at home and um, not change her clothes, not take a shower, not comb her hair, just kind of be.
Chill.
Yeah, not do anything. And she'd do that for months at a time,
Yeah.
according to her friend Stuart Timmons. She would, one time he says that they were going for a walk and um, she loved black pants. She always had on black pants
Mhm.
practically. And they were walking and she looked around. She said, "Oh, it's springtime. I guess I'm going to have to finally take these winter pants off and wash them." Like she had been
Oh,
wearing them for months. That's what it sounds like. I
a
don't
bit of a
know.
recluse, it sounds like. Slightly
Yes,
reclusive.
intentionally. Yes, intentionally. She said I became a recluse or not a hobo, but a tramp or, I just went into hiding. I didn't want anyone to know I had been Vampira. I wanted
Mm.
to, I wanted to pull
Hide.
that costume off
Yeah.
and not be her anymore. I was Helen Heaven. Well, before that, she was Melrose Rose, and then she became Helen Heaven. In fact, Hilda still calls her Helen because that's
Mm.
how she was introduced to her in the 70s. She doesn't
Yeah.
call her Mila, she calls her Hilda. I mean, calls her Helen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never, Mila and I never knew any of this when, after I'd seen her in 1989. We didn't talk about Hilda. We didn't talk about the 70s. We didn't talk about the Misfits. We didn't talk about the punks
Mhm.
that embraced her as well as she embraced them. She had found her people again. She was so
Yes.
happy to find them. Um, the myths, like I said, the misfits, the miscreants, the people that don't fit into regular
Yeah.
society. Those were her people. That's where she was comfortable. That's who she loved. But yeah, it was. She had her ups and downs, and the thing that makes me the most sad is that she died alone.
Yes.
That bothers me to this day because her mother died alone.
Mm.
And I remember Mila saying, God, I hope that doesn't happen to me. And she did, but it was kind of like her own fault. Um, Dana Gould had hired people to stay with Mila,
Yeah.
and she would brush them off, get out of here, or tell them she didn't like them and they had to leave.
Mhm.
So she wanted to be alone with her dog and her cat
Mhm.
and sort of brushed everybody else out of the way. So
Yes.
she was alone.
Do you think that she was happy in those last days? She was doing all like a lot of creative like art and jewelry making and that.
Greg Herger was a good friend of hers. They had a lunch date every Tuesday. And then they would talk for hours and hours and hours. And Greg loves Mila to this day.
Mm.
And she had called him the end of December and said, my gate is broken and I'm afraid Hootie, her dog, is going to get escape. And so can you come over and fix it? He said, sure. And he went right over there and they sat in her little patio area. He fixed the garden gate and he noticed Mila's arm and it was all bitten up and
Oh.
swollen and black and green and horrible looking. And he said, Mila, what happened to your arm? And she said, oh, never mind. That's just Hootie. He didn't mean it. I had food in my hand and he grabbed it. He said, you need to go to the doctor and
Mm.
I'm taking you right now. You are going to the emergency room. She would not go. You could not make Mila budge. If she said no, she always won the argument. Nothing could change her
Mm.
mind. She wouldn't go. And she died probably a week later. But Greg was tortured, saying, I know it was that arm. I know that poison in that arm killed her.
Ooh.
And I said, Greg, she died of heart failure
Yeah.
because Hilda, Hilda Alvarez, had taken her about 2 weeks before Christmas or a week before Christmas. Mila had called her and said, I'm so tired and so exhausted. I think it's my thyroid. And can you
Mm.
take me to the health food store? And so Hilda came and picked her up, took her down there, and she took thyroid pills. And I found the thyroid pills in her house, along with lots of B12, for her
Yes,
pernicious anemia.
yes. And she was like
And
85. Is that
she was
correct?
8. She had just turned
Yeah.
85. And I now know that she was so exhausted because she was experiencing heart failure.
Mm.
And also, I heard from some friends that had taken her out for her birthday on December 11th, and she had ordered a margarita, and she drank half of it and passed out.
Mm.
So she was ill already then in December, and
Yes.
then passed away. She was found on the 10th, but I think she probably went on about the 5th.
Mm.
Uh, I talked to Conrad, her mailman, and he says that he saw her the last time on the 3rd because that's Social Security Day,
Yeah.
and she was standing on the porch waiting for the mail. And so I know she was alive on the 3rd, but what happened between the 3rd and the 10th, I don't know.
And at what stage, Sandra, did you enter the property then to like what stage did you make the trip down to go in and gather everything up?
I found out Mila passed away by reading our Oregonian. I'd come home from work and I opened it up to whatever page it was, and it said Maila Nurmi, who was Vampira, has passed away. And I went, oh my God. Now I have to take care of her. She doesn't,
Mm.
I don't think she has anyone else.
Yeah.
Maybe she has a husband, but I don't know. I have to find out. So I called my best friend Dawn and I just said, she said, hello. And she lived 60 miles away. And I said, Mila's dead. And she said, oh no, because she knew we were very close. And so we flew that was a Monday night. She died on a Thursday, and I found out Monday night, the 14th of January. I was in LA on the 16th, and I got access to her apartment on Friday, the 18th.
Right.
Uh, and it had been sealed up, after she passed away. There was a
Mhm.
seal on the door, and I couldn't break the seal until the coroner's office and everybody had okayed me. And then I had to prove who I was.
Yes.
And I had some old letters my grandmother had written on Vampira stationery. I had my father's obituary, which mentioned his sister Maila Nurmi in California, and I had some other things, my ID. Anyway, they believed me and they let me in, and so then the process of salvaging what I could was there, and that's what I
Mhm.
did. I went back a couple times. I went back to Oregon to work and then came back for her memorial, and the apartment was still there with all our stuff in there. I went through it again, and I think even a third time, March, I went back and was able to go through the apartment for the last time.
Wow, so it was really a labor of love, wasn't it? Literally, yeah. And how did this you know how did it impact you writing this emotionally? did it make you feel closer to her? I mean, how did you sort of process? I mean, to find out so much about your beloved aunt's life and to be able to write this wonderful book, how's that impacted you?
Well, like I said, I didn't know she'd done cheesecake,
Mhm.
so I was surprised about that. But some of the things that she had to undergo, like with Kozlov and Clark, two men who, violated her, or,
Mm.
uh, I thought, gosh, I hope times have changed since then. That was terrible. She was a young girl then.
Yes.
She was only 19, maybe 20. I don't think she was even 20, and they took advantage of
Mm.
her. And then the love affairs, she really loved that Charles Beatles. He wasn't famous,
Mm.
but boy, did she love him. Um, Dean Reisner and Chuck Beatles were the two loves of her life.
Mm.
Uh, so she had broken hearts, and I kind of could feel that, saying, oh man, and she was there all alone, and she didn't have any work, and she was broke, and her boyfriend was mean, and he took off, and especially after the house fire. They had a house fire in 1956, and there's a picture of Maila sitting on a sofa in an old house dress, cuddling a cat with bandaged arms from the fire. That picture was 2 weeks after she filmed Plan 9, and that
Wow.
iconic, gorgeous
Yes.
pose. And here she is, all frowsy and looks like she's well in her 40s, cuddling this cat with bandaged arms, not a stitch of makeup on. And I wanted those two pictures put in the book side by side
Mm.
so people could see this is Vampira. Mm, and this is Maila.
This is
But
reality. Yeah.
yeah, it didn't happen, but it's all right. I don't think that picture even made it into the book. But anyway, yeah, she had, and the Elvira lawsuit. I'm still mad about that.
Yes.
I
Tell us about
still,
that.
well, I didn't ask her anything about the Elvira suit. What I found out about the lawsuit was after I had collected her things. She had, oh, probably a book this high. I don't know if you can even see my hand.
Yes, I
With
can. I
all,
can,
yeah,
Sam.
with all of this, it was a thing that you opened up like this, and it was thick. It looked like every stitch of paper that ever came out of that lawsuit she had.
Hmm.
And I threw most of it away. I just needed a brief summary for the book, and that's what I put in there. But the fact, I'm still mad
Yeah.
that while Elvira raked in millions, Mila didn't have electricity.
Mm.
And that hurts
It,
still.
it it is shocking.
That she could have given her $10,000. She wouldn't have even felt it. She would have just said, here, and not put her name on it, because Mila would never have accepted it.
Hmm.
She would have had to send it anonymously, because, yeah, Mila would have never accepted a dime from her. But yeah, it still hurts, that she had to
Yeah.
suffer like that. She never had a washer and dryer. She had a sofa at the end because Dana Gould bought her that sofa
Oh, okay.
and painted the back wall light blue, because every place she'd ever lived it was white or dirty white. So he painted it a very pale blue. He was good to Mila. He was the one who paid for her to be buried in Hollywood Forever.
Yes.
I was going to take her, in fact, I paid for her cremation. It was $427, I think, then. And Dana said, Mila wants to be in Hollywood Forever. She doesn't want to be up in Oregon.
Hmm.
And I said, well, I can't afford that. And it's 100 grand or whatever it is to be buried there. And he says, I'll take care of it. And I said, okay, all right, but I'm paying you for the cremation because she's my family,
Yeah.
and that's all I can do for her then. that's what I'll do. And so he paid for the gravesite and for her and her dog Houdini. So they are there, and they have a beautiful spot. It
Oh,
overlooks the water, the man-made huge pond with swans in it 24/7, 12 months a year. There's peacocks that roam freely, and
wow.
and geese and ducks, everything that Mila loved.
Yes.
Um, and she's right there on the roadway. There's no one that can go in front of her onto the road. She's the first one. And so I know she would love that spot. And thanks to Dana,
Oh.
she has perpetual care there, and that's where she'll be.
Well, it sounds beautiful, and it's on my list of things to do. So yeah, next time I'm in Hollywood,
Oh,
I will
good.
definitely be there.
Good. I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, it was a labor of love.
absolutely.
And and
Yeah.
I thought many times of giving up and thinking, this is no good. But the thing that always got me back was you have all this information of Mila. You
Mm,
know that Mila wanted to have her life story out there. She
mm,
told you that. So you know that's true. And if you don't do it, nobody else can.
mhm,
And then she'll only be a footnote in history.
mm.
And because you didn't follow through. And she deserved more than just being a footnote. She deserved some immortality.
Yes.
And I think this might help do that. Now the
Wh-
next thing I want is I want her to have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Oh,
That's
yes.
what
Absolutely,
I'm
she
hoping
should.
for more
We
than
have to
anything.
start a petition for it, Sandra.
Yes, that's what I want. And I think she deserves it. And it's horribly expensive. I think it's 50 grand.
Wow.
But, with all of her fans, maybe
Yeah,
it's a possibility,
I think
um,
so. I
because
think this is the
she did.
next project for you.
I think so too. I think we need to do that because
Absolutely.
she deserves it. She was even mentioned on the year that she passed away. They always have an in memoriam where they
Mhm.
sing a song and talk about the people that had in show business that had passed away the year before. And Mila was mentioned on that Oscar forecast or Oscar show. As I watched it, she only had about 10 seconds,
Yeah.
but I went, oh, there she is.
Yay.
So she was important enough to be mentioned on the Oscars. She deserves a Hollywood star Walk of Fame star.
Absolutely. I'm really surprised she doesn't have one already. She really
I am
should.
too. I
Yeah,
am too.
absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, we're gonna have to work on that.
I will. I will.
I'll help you anyway.
Okay. All right. All right. Oh, and may I mention, you're certainly gorgeous.
Oh, thank you so much, Sandra. That's very
You
kind of you.
remind me of Mila.
Oh, well, that's just probably the best compliment I've ever had in my
You
entire life.
do. I mean, when she was in costume,
Yes,
with the
yes,
eyebrows and the black hair and the red lips, hemorrhage red.
yes,
Yeah, you
yes.
look an awful
Well,
lot
thank you
like
very
her.
much. That's so,
Yeah.
well, she's certainly a big inspiration, role model, and like I said, I wouldn't be. I mean, I'm horror hosting, as you know now, and
Uh-huh.
it's because of Mila being the first television horror host, which has really opened up this, well, horror hosting for the last 50, 60, 70 years. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I'm really so grateful. She is such a role model for me.
Oh.
Um, yeah, it is a thrill to be talking with you today. Um, I have to thank you so much for joining us. I've one sort of last question. I'm
Yes.
wondering if what do you think, if is there anything in Maya's life do you think that she would have done differently?
Oh, I think in retrospect she would have because she knew became aware that sometimes she was her own worst enemy. In
How so?
fact, well, she was going to name her autobiography How to Dig Your Own Grave with Your Teeth. So she so so she knew. when she ripped up that contract in 1945 in that famous director producer's office and threw the contract in his face and walked out the door, she knew years later she said goodbye to a fabulous film career.
Yeah.
And you know, she did a lot of other things. Maybe she didn't work with the Elvira thing, but you know, if in the beginning she had played her cards a little bit different, maybe they wouldn't have hired Cassandra Peterson. It was only because they gave her the rights that Maila walked off. You know,
Yes.
you gave her the Vampira rights, something I've been protecting for 50 years, and you
Yes.
just gave them to her and said, "Oh, you girls figure it out." No, that was not going to happen. So yeah, I think she knew that I should have played my cards a little differently.
With
But you
with
know,
that
she was
ending.
stubborn too. She was stubborn, and
Yeah.
if she thought she was right, she would never change. But a couple of things that she did, she was aware I shouldn't have done that because things would have been different. I think so. Yeah.
What do you think she could have done differently, though? I mean,
Well, for one thing, she should have just waited it out when Howard Hawks was said, send her home and see what goes on. He wanted to fix her teeth before she went into film, but he had a film all picked out for her.
mhm.
I mentioned it in the book. I can't remember the name of the book now, but F. Scott Fitzgerald, his friend, had written it, and it was a horror
Yes.
film with a Victorian old Victorian home, and that was the vehicle he was going to use Maila on. But he needed to, you know, have her teeth fixed. And maybe she could get some small roles and parts until then, see how she looked on film.
Hmm.
He liked everything about her except for her
Yeah.
teeth. And she did have sort of a gummy smile,
Uh-huh.
and her front two teeth were, there was a little gap in there. And, you know, you can't have that when you're on film,
Yeah. Hollywood.
usually anyway. Um, except for Margot. Was it Margot Hemingway? Anyway, gap in the
Mhm.
teeth. Anyway, so that was one place. I'm trying to think if there was another time where I don't think she would have stayed with Chuck Beatles if she had known the heartache he brought her
Hmm.
twice, leaving her once and coming back to torment her again 10 years later. Um, and then in later years, well, you know, but by the time she hit 50, she knew, you know, any aspirations I may have to be in film or be a monologist are long gone. You know,
Mm.
the last time she appeared in Vampira costume was with the Misfits in 1981. And she was what, 59 then?
Well, I've seen the
Yeah.
photos, and she still looks gorgeous and
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah, and it wasn't, of course, the original Vampira
So,
elf because she had appeared with her neighbor on Melrose in a little play, and had appeared in what do you call it? It's a little square like a picture frame. She had appeared as Vampira in that, so she
mhm.
had made that costume. That's why she had it available to appear with the Misfits. But she loved those guys. She loved the Misfits, and
Yeah.
she loved all of her punk friend, and especially Tamata Duplanty. Oh, she loved him. He was the lead singer of the Screamers.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and you know, what's really weird is that one picture of Mila and I that I have on Melrose in 1989.
Yes.
There's a poster on the telephone pole for the Screamers.
Oh, how
And I
weird.
went, oh, and she never ever told me anything about Tamata Duplanty. You know, we didn't talk about that. She thought I was this conservative schoolgirl, and I totally wasn't. I am so much like her, you
Really?
know. Oh, I totally am like her. And I never knew why. You know, because I'm an only child.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, my mother and father only had one child, and they got the black sheep of all the luck that they could have had, because I never knew, or I had this, I don't know, this weirdness. Like, I never married. I never wanted to be married, but I
Yeah.
have a child, and so that was very, very, oh my God, it didn't bother me in the least. And I come from a town with 10,000 people. I was so proud of my daughter. It didn't bother me in the least, not even
Yeah.
this much. And, I see a lot of similarities between Mila and I.
Well, I was going to say, the eyes, your eyes,
Yeah, somebody told me that once. Yeah, that,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I could
And,
spot it right away. It's amazing. I mean,
good.
how does it feel like to, you've seen like how much love there is for Mila
Yeah, I
worldwide
do.
now, and the
Yeah.
response of the book, which has been incredible.
how does it sort of make you feel being, the author and, well, most importantly, the niece of Mila? How does it make you feel to see all this now?
Well, really, the reviews are out, and I was shocked at the beginning, like, oh my God, they liked that writing. Well, I'm very happy. I'm very happy. But what really makes me happy is that Mila's fans are getting to know who she was. That's what she wanted. That's
Mhm.
what she always wanted to leave behind, but ran out of time.
Mhm.
And so now the world will know it. But I'm surprised that she has this many fans. I knew she had a few fans in Germany, and a few fans in Finland, and a few fans in the UK, and maybe even in the East. But how many fans? I did not realize that so many people loved her.
Absolutely.
And so many people wanted to know what kind of life she had. And that makes me really happy, because that's the whole purpose.
Mm.
The whole purpose was to let the world know who this woman was,
Yes.
her pain and her passion.
Mm.
Uh, that was the purpose of the whole book. And it's
Yeah. Well,
happening, and I'm so grateful.
oh, well, you should be so proud, Sandra, because
Oh,
the book is absolutely incredible.
oh,
Um, it was heartwarming, heart-wrenching at the same time to read it. Um,
oh.
I was just enthralled. Your writing is incredible. I'm wondering what's next for you, or you've done such a wonderful job on this book. Is there any plans for another book?
Well, not seriously. I thought, well, this is a one and done. I'm I'm playing around with a fiction, because I can't write any more nonfiction about
Mhm.
Mila. I put it all out there that I had.
Yes.
But in 1972, when I was 25, I had a friend who lived in Long Beach, California. My best friend had moved to Long Beach, California, which is right next to Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And so I moved down there. She was living with her aunt, and her aunt had gone on a month's vacation. So I had a place to stay for a month for free.
Mhm.
And while I was there, I could go look for Aunt Mila. I didn't know where she was, but I knew she was in Hollywood, and I wanted to
Wow.
find her. And so I went there and tried to find her. I think 2 or 3 times I went on Hollywood Boulevard and went to the souvenir shops and saw pictures of her and asked about her. Nobody knew anything, and I didn't know how to do anything either.
Mhm.
So it was all for naught. But in this fiction book, I find her. And it's what happens from 1972 on. If I had found her in 1972 when I wanted to.
No.
And the premise of it is all the people that screwed her over through her life, we take care of them. Every single one of them who ripped her off and made money off of Vampira,
Yeah.
we take care of them in this book. And the book would be kind of like, if only. This is Mila's perfect life. If only we could have done this. I'm just thinking about that. I don't know if I'm going to do it or
Oh,
not.
you haven't started anything yet
Oh,
then?
no, no. but it's all in my head, and I don't know if I'm going to do it or not. But yeah, Mila will have a boyfriend who's not really a lawyer because he never passed the bar, but he writes letters for her, pretending he's a lawyer. And, you know, it's just kind of a silly type of
Yeah.
happy story.
Yes.
Because that's what Mila would have liked to do. And I would have been her partner in crime because I'm like her. Like I said, we would think of all kinds of cool stuff together.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. You know, it wouldn't attract the same kind of customer base as the Vampira book, but because it would be just a fiction, funny one, you know.
Well, I think anyone who's interested in Vampire World, you know, is always looking for any sort of information. So, and you've done such a wonderful job at writing. And I really, was that your first book, like your first time writing?
Oh, sure. I'd never written another thing ever.
Oh, it was just so incredible. The writing style was, I finished the book and I just felt like I was there. Like you just brought me, I felt like I was so there every step of the way. It really touched me a lot, Sandra. It was really incredible. I have to thank you so much. And I'm sure that everyone who's read it is you know, it feels exactly the same as I do.
I am still shocked by that, but I'm also happy, very happy that the writing was explicit enough for people to enjoy and not get messed up in the bad writing.
No, it was so, it explained everything so well that I actually felt I was there. You know, it was, and normally I don't normally feel that way when I'm reading, but really was amazing. So.
Wow. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you, Sandra.
You're welcome.
Yes, well, okay. Well, I think we're probably coming up to time now for you.
I don't even see the time, but I don't have my glasses on, so I can't
Neither
tell.
do I, Sandra.
Okay.
It's been so wonderful talking with you.
It's been a joy, let me tell you. I love talking about Aunt Mila.
I know, I can tell.
Thank you so much. Gosh, you look like her. I just go.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, we'll say goodbye. And
all right.
I'll be in touch with you soon.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Bye, Sandra.
Bye-bye.
Love.
I got a woman, she's 6'3". Ooh, buddy, what she doing to me? She got loving and some mighty strange. Vampira, that's her name. Vampira, yeah, vampira. Vampira, yeah, that's my baby's name. Late last night we were out on the lawn, sitting on a cold graveyard stone. Here comes Dracula and Frankenstein, looking for the sugar at supper time. Vampire, yeah, vampire. Vampire, that's my baby's name. Took Vampira to a rock and roll. When we started to do the stroll, her knees started shaking, her eyeballs twist. Looked like a mummy with the 7 in her wrist.